He told me how foolish you were, how fearful, how like a child, how you fell into his arms as a swooning lily of a woman.
This is one of those scenes that really stayed with me lately, and it's because Ellen is forcing Thomas to face what happened just nights earlier when he visited Orlok.
Come by the fire. Your face shows you unwell.
A sequence that is honestly one of the most unsettling I've seen in a long time.
We are newly married of late. Incidentally, I have letters to her I would post if I may.
And while I was watching it, I couldn't stop thinking about how different it is from Coppola's Dracula and how he handles that same situation.
We're to be married as soon as I return. Are you married, Count?
You see, both Jonathan and Thomas are actually very similar characters.
I want you to take over for his foreign client, this rather eccentric Count Dracula. He's buying up property around London.
Young men living with their partners, Ellen and Mina.
I have been entertaining dealings with a foreign count. Very old line of nobility. Very old and eccentric.
And both of them are sent out on a rather peculiar assignment.
Close these transactions, and your future with this firm is assured.
To travel to Transylvania and visit a count in his castle.
Secure this account and you will secure your official position in the firm.
And once they get there, both young men end up trapped after an awkward dinner, while the vampires sail across the sea to go after their wives. So they team up with an occult expert.
The vampire. Nosferatu.
She's vampire, Nosferatu.
And together, they plan how to take the monster down. But what really changes is the monster they're up against.
No, I cannot let this be.
First, because the creature's relationship to these women is completely different.
You cannot love.
If Ellen says this to Orlok,
I cannot.
well, Dracula refuses to bite the woman he loves.
I love you too much to continue.
Because he knows exactly what that would mean for her.
You are late.
And second, because the way these creatures relate to their husbands is also completely different.
Enter freely of your own will and leave some of the happiness you bring.
In Coppola's Dracula, Jonathan also ends up a prisoner. But the difference is that Dracula is more of a manipulator.
She will no doubt make a devoted wife. And you a faithful husband.
With both the men and the women, he uses seduction as his weapon, something we see with Mina and with her friend as well, as they both find themselves inexplicably pulled toward him, partly because this version of Dracula embodies repressed desire, which is one of the film's central themes.
Jonathan measures up, doesn't he? You can tell Lucy. We've kissed, that's all.
Which brings us to this not-so-subtle line.
It's so big.
Which conveniently happens right after Dracula pulls out that exaggerated, almost theatrical sword, framing him as an object of desire. And that's because, like I said, longing and sensuality are at the core of Dracula.
Kiss me and caress me, my darling husband, please.
And that's why Jonathan's experience is completely different. He's not trapped in some kind of Silent Hill situation, he's being seduced by his own impulses. But with Nosferatu, things are completely different. Because if eroticism is a way of expressing what lies beneath in Dracula, in Nosferatu, that intimacy is present too, but almost as a means of revealing the dynamics between the characters.
You could never please me as he could.
And to make that clear, I want to go back to these two scenes.
I wish you to do as I request.
Yes. Of course, sir.
Lord,
If Dracula is a manipulator, Orlok is far more direct.
drink.
From the very beginning, you can see he isn't trying to persuade Thomas. He's trying to break him.
I might ease your wound.
The castle sequence shows Thomas gradually fading away until he's left unable to act. Which culminates when Orlok descends upon him, which is exactly what Ellen is referencing with that line about him. And the harsh part is that it is framed as a profound intrusion, especially considering how he wakes up the next morning. So Ellen is essentially throwing his own vulnerability in his face, implying that he failed to perform his role up to societal expectations to protect both himself and her.
Well, where is it? Your money, your promotion, your house?
And the entire film keeps hammering this point.
And when will you two newlyweds? I am no longer a pauper.
How Thomas consistently fails to live up to the expectations of a husband of his era, a provider. Even his friend compares himself to a force of nature when talking about his own wife.
I cannot resist her.
just to make the contrast even clearer. That's why this scene matters so much. Thomas's sense of worth is questioned both by what happened to him in Orlok's domain and by his inability to provide for his wife. And the way he tries to reclaim that lost sense of masculinity comes through in two moments within this scene. First, with this action, and then with this line.
I'll kill him. Kill him, I will. He shall never harm you again.
But the harsh truth is that this is nothing more than a lie he tells himself, and the film proves it, because in the resolution, he's ultimately pushed aside. And there's even a hint of his inability to ever be enough for Ellen from the very beginning. Right after the opening prologue, when Ellen wakes up, the first thing she does is call out to Thomas. But the camera doesn't look toward his side of the bed. Instead, it turns to the window, the same window Orlok will later enter through. And from their very first interaction, the film suggests that Thomas can't fully satisfy her.
Take off your shoes.
I wish I could stay, my love.
With a mirrored shot of what we'll later see in the ending. And even the scenes between them that could be read as romantic or erotic are shot with a certain sense of disturbance. Take this one, for example. It's not just the sound, it's the camera refusing to show the action clearly, turning the moment awkward, like something is off or missing, and ending in darkness. Though I have to admit that the shot that disturbs me the most in this sense is the one where Thomas wakes Orlok up. Because, unlike the traditional portrayal of vampires, the corporeality here isn't a symbol of hidden longing, it's a display of power. And I want to talk about these details and more, especially the way this film's prologue contrasts with Coppola's, which are basically polar opposites, yet perfectly capture the essence of each version of the character, and why their differences are so brilliant. But before we jump back into the video, a quick shout out to today's sponsor, Incogni. If you're like me and spend a lot of time online,
doesn't look like him. It's him. You Jake Sully?
You've probably heard of data brokers, companies that collect and sell your info without you knowing, which in the best case scenario just leads to more spam, and in the worst case can be used to impersonate you or make you a victim of a scam. And the crazy part is that while collecting that information is technically legal, they're also legally required to remove your data if you ask,
so to speak.
But let's be honest, doing that manually would take forever. That's where Incogni comes in, a personal data removal service that automatically scrubs your information from public websites and private databases. And with their new custom removal feature, if you ever find a site exposing your info, for example, just by Googling your name, all you have to do is submit the link for removal, and they take care of the rest. In my case, I barely get spam anymore, but the real value is the extra layer of security and the peace of mind of knowing that if my info ever pops up again, Incogni's active monitoring keeps my digital footprint clean.
So, see this? This is all your memories.
And since these days our whole lives are online, from your banking and health records to sensitive stuff about personal projects like my YouTube channel, where I've even been getting constant phishing emails with personal info that look like hacking attempts. Having that extra layer of protection is genuinely worth it, and I'm glad to say you can get it by heading to incogni.com/Lancelloti, or by clicking the link in the description and using the code Lancelloti for 60% off. So if you want to get your data off those markets and browse safely, just click the link in the description and use the code Lancelloti to get 60% off. Now, back to the video.
Come to me.
There's a detail I love in both of these prologues, and it's that they really carry the film's soul. Not because of how different their protagonists are, or even their monsters, but because they end up reshaping the meaning of the whole movie.
Come to me. The guardian angel.
Nosferatu opens with a younger Ellen of an undefined age, surrounded by darkness, begging for a guardian angel.
Hear my call.
And what she gets is the complete opposite. The camera holds the entire moment in a single, majestic shot that ends by placing both figures in opposition, followed by Orlok's line. The one that, for me, explains why he's drawn to her, as he puts it the second time they meet later in the film.
Till you did wake me, enchantress.
And why she ends up summoning him without even meaning to.
You are not of humankind.
And the film hints more than once that Ellen isn't exactly a normal girl.
She truly is beautiful.
First, when we're told she's had premonitory qualities since childhood.
And I know things. I always knew the contents of my Christmas gifts. I knew when
that my mother would pass.
Something the story reinforces later,
He's here!
when she predicts things before they happen.
A nonpareil. Almost a...
And then, when Nock refers to her as a sylph.
Sylph?
Essentially, an otherworldly female spirit of the air. It's a word that fittingly comes from the alchemist Paracelsus, whose school von Franz is said to follow.
He became obsessed with the work of Paracelsus.
But the point is that Ellen isn't of this world, and that's part of her tragedy. She's been misunderstood since childhood, almost in the same way people misread A Troubled Girl. The film, after all, operates on two layers at once, the fairy tale and the social one.
You deceive yourself.
I was but an innocent child.
And Orlok works on both levels. His presence doesn't just distort Ellen from a very young age. That supernatural quality also becomes a metaphor for her emotional state, because in her own words, he is her melancholy.
He is my melancholy. He took me as his lover then, and now he has come back. He has discovered our marriage and has come back.
Impossible.
A term that, in the early 19th century, referred to a profound state of sorrow, rooted in the old medical idea of the humors, something we'd obviously diagnose very differently today.
I'm not mad, Hannah.
Obviously, if we're talking about this, we can't ignore the fact that melancholy in that historical context was often linked to hysteria in the case of women. That's why the question of gender and its social roles works in both directions. For Thomas, but also for Ellen. And that's why it feels so meaningful that, in this story, men end up arbitrating Ellen's fate. Not only the hyper-masculine presence of Nosferatu,
I will leave you 3 nights,
but also every man who surrounds her.
Thomas as well. I'm certain of it.
Acquaintances, her husband, the rational man of science, and the spiritual advisor, who, regardless of their virtues, ultimately presume to decide on her behalf.
I'm convinced only you have the faculty to redeem us.
It's that sense of being completely at the mercy of everyone else. But going back to the prologue, one detail that reinforces that idea in the film's very first shot is the way the frame positions the house in the background, half open on Ellen's side of the frame, almost as if she had opened the doors of her home to this demon, and she's just floating there, entirely under his power. It immediately makes me think of this line.
As if you were at the whim of another, like a doll, and someone or something had the power to breathe life.
Because she's framed almost like a doll being lifted out of its house. And that idea is reinforced in the next shot of Ellen, where the entire weight of the image falls on her. And we'll see this kind of framing throughout the whole film. Characters reduced to tiny figures within the composition, as if they were insignificant beings overwhelmed by the immensity around them, whether it's nature or darkness, something very characteristic of romanticism, where the human figure is always set against the vastness of the world. Take this shot, for example, which closely echoes Thomas's journey to the Count's castle. Except here, the image also marks a cross on the ground, and unlike Coppola's use of Christianity in Dracula, here crosses aren't a refuge or an antidote to evil. Their use is almost ironic. Eggers shows a form of Christianity that feels emptied out, mechanical, objectified, without much spiritual force. In his films, even though God is constantly invoked, the world still feels distant from that presence, which is why the crosses read more like quiet calls for help fading into the darkness. Finally, to close the prologue, we return to the darkness, this time with her lying on her back. And with that first interaction between her and Orlok, the one that plants the seed for the rest of the film and comes back in the ending. And it's an incredible prologue because it reframes everything we're about to see in the film.
Year 1462. Constantinople had fallen.
And as I mentioned earlier, it's the complete opposite of Dracula's.
From Transylvania arose a Romanian knight of the Sacred Order of the Dragon, known as Dracula.
Here, once again, we have the Count and the protagonist. Only this time, from the very beginning, the Count is presented as an idealized figure, at moments even heroic. He's a noble, aristocratic warrior prince who could easily stand on the front lines of the Lord of the Rings. And he's not especially faithful to the historical figure he's loosely based on, who was far more brutal and bloodthirsty. But what's interesting is that Coppola adds an origin story that reframes the entire plot, since this prologue doesn't exist in the book.
Vengeful Turks shot an arrow into the castle, carrying false news of Dracula's death.
After winning a battle, Dracula's wife is deceived into believing he has died, and consumed by immense grief,
My prince is dead.
she passes away. It's at that moment that Dracula chooses to defy God. And in doing so, he becomes cursed. And just to clarify, if you haven't seen the film, Dracula's wife essentially returns in the form of Elizabeth, the protagonist.
Standing before me, all in black, was
But what I love about these two prologues is that even though the stories are very similar, they establish completely different ideas. In Nosferatu, Ellen embodies a notion deeply tied to romanticism.
But I'm so happy. So very happy.
An attraction to tragic beauty. Meanwhile, Dracula's origin is something deeply human, the inability to face mortality.
I have crossed oceans of time to find you.
One story is about accepting fate, the other is about denying it. Coppola's Dracula stems from a more classical, almost anthropocentric impulse. That old impulse to push back against God by refusing your fate.
My entire life I've done no ill but heed my nature.
Then hearken to it.
They're two very different kinds of tragedy, sitting at opposite ends of the spectrum, and that's why their conclusions diverge so sharply. Dracula ultimately turns Elizabeth into a vampire,
Our love is stronger than death.
passing his curse onto her, and dies, reversing their roles, even visually, in the exact same place. Now, it's her turn to carry that weight.
We must burn it, we must destroy all his habitation, no sanctuary.
No, there is no time to be lost. He pursues Ellen.
It must be her!
In Nosferatu, this is completely different. And even though Ellen seems to enjoy the moment, it doesn't make it any less sad. And in that sense, the tragedy isn't just hers, it's also Thomas's, who is far more present than his counterpart in Dracula. And this love triangle becomes a struggle between two forces, life and death. In Dracula, on the other hand, there's barely a love triangle at all, because Keanu Reeves gets sidelined pretty early. That's why, while in Nosferatu the reunion between Thomas and Ellen is tender,
I feared I'd never see you again.
in Dracula, we don't even see it. It happens off-screen.
Mina. Stay with me.
Jonathan becomes more of an obstacle than a character you actually empathize with. Instead, you end up connecting more with the villain, partly because Coppola turns him into a multifaceted figure, at times charming, at times terrifying, sometimes just plain strange, and in other moments, as pathetic as any of us when we're dealing with heartbreak. And that's because at its core, the film is really about that. About desire, sure, but more importantly, about impossible love.
I have received word from my fiancé in Romania. I am en route to join him. We are to be married. I will never see you again.
That's why my favorite sequence is the one that mirrors The Godfather's baptism scene, juxtaposing a wave of death with the sanctity of new life. Here, instead, while Mina and Jonathan are getting married,
I condemn you.
The film cuts to Dracula trying to turn Mina's friend, who has already been bitten, almost like a desperate attempt to soothe his heartbreak.
To eternal hunger.
As if his vampiric hunger were directly tied to his loneliness. And with this video, I'm not trying to argue which approach is better or worse. What interests me is how you can build two completely different films out of almost the same ingredients, and still end up with two movies that, to me, are defining works of their eras. Timeless in their own way.
Our love is stronger than death.